Well, hi again, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar presented by the Georgia State University Alumni Association and University Career Services. I'm Dave Cohen, coming to you from the Georgia State Alumni Center in Atlanta, and today we are set to present another in our alumni webinar series. Our topic today, exploring concrete strategies for navigating the job search. We thought this would be an appropriate topic coming out of the holidays for those of you that find yourself in a job search during the month of January. We'd like to welcome our viewers on the StreamYard platform, as well as those watching on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. So welcome and thanks for being with us this afternoon. We will have a question and answer session following the presentation with our guest speaker. Questions can be submitted via StreamYard and on the Facebook Live page. Our guest speaker today is a return guest speaker. He's been with us before. Shannon Shelton, Senior Career Counselor at University Career Services here at Georgia State in Atlanta. And Shannon, it's great to have you back with us this afternoon, and thank you for once again presenting this valuable information.
Thank you. It's great to be back. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am Shannon Shelton, Senior Career Counselor with University Career Services. I'm also a proud GSU alum. Thank you, Dave, for having me here again today. As Dave said, we'll have a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. So please hold your questions until the end. I'll be happy to answer them all. Today, we'll be discussing some strategies for a job search. There are some specific strategies and tips that are helpful. Many of them are our tried and true job search techniques that are still relevant and lead to successfully securing a job. Before you begin any job search, you want to make sure you have a solid resume. I know that Dave provides this service for you guys through Alumni Relations. And here I want to spend a few moments discussing the components of the resume as part of your job search, because the resume is that important. So what does a resume achieve? The resume is a marketing document for you. This is where you summarize your work and educational history and experience. You will utilize your resume whenever you're applying for a job or when you're asking someone to provide a reference for you. In most cases, your resume is reviewed first before you secure a job interview. So you need a resume to put you in touch with employers. Resumes are also important when you're networking. We'll touch on that a little bit today. When you're networking and making an introduction of yourself, maybe for an informational interview, which is really important in networking, you'll want to have a solid resume to attach to your emails. You may be wondering what you should highlight on your resume. Take a look here on the slide. Here are some of the skills to consider, both soft skills and more technical skills, depending upon what the job requires. For those in particular industries, soft skills may be more important. Things such as problem solving, teamwork, organizational skills, creativity. While those in more technical fields may want to put specifically software that they know how to use, project management strategies, what type of presentation development you can do, foreign languages, etc. Think through how you want to market yourself when you approach writing or editing your resume. Okay, so the resume format. I want to lay out a simple and effective format for you. Here on the screen is a sample resume that employers that interact with our office find very easy to read. You'll see that the name and contact information are very clearly visible at the top of the resume. You want to make sure that your name is the largest font at the top, and you only need to use your city, state, and zip. I know back in the day on resumes we used to put our street address, but now city, state is just fine. You also want to put a professional email. Make sure the email address that you choose is professional and appropriate. And most importantly, Make sure that this is an email account that you check on a daily basis if you're using it for your job search. You may also add LinkedIn or any other online professional site to the top of your resume as well. You want to make sure that you use headers to organize your information. You see here that the headers are education, related experience, professional skills, etc. Make sure the resume is clear and concise and very easy to read. If you are recently graduated and maybe you've just had 1 or 2 jobs, a one-page resume is preferred. If you've had 10 or more years experience in your field, you can certainly move over into a second page. What you also want to do underneath each of your jobs is focus on achievements. You'll see here that each of these related experiences are using bullet points. So you just don't want to list your job tasks. You want to focus on achievements and even list quantified results if you can. You want to make sure that you tailor your resume for each position that you're applying for. So you want to use the job description to be able to do that. And always keep in mind who your resume is going to be presented to. So remember your audience. So I mentioned using the job description when you're writing your resume, specifically, for a job. You want to look at the responsibilities and tasks that are listed in the job description. See if that verbiage is verbiage that you can also use in your resume. You want to look for keywords and action verbs in that job description and see which ones apply to you. Also use those in your resume. Look for those degree requirements and the skill set requirements that are in the job description, and that will help you to compose your bullet points. When reviewing your job description, brainstorm about how you've already utilized and strengthened the skill set that you have. Consider the experience that you already have and how it's prepared you for the role that you're going to be applying for. And use the job description to leverage. I mentioned writing those bullet points. Here are some of the action verbs that can be used to begin your bullet points. You won't be using pronouns. You won't be saying, I did this and I did that. You want to lead off your bullet points with action verbs that describe skills, like analyze, budgeted, counseled, developed, scheduled, supervised, those types of things. Here's a sample of work experience from a recent graduate that was turned into some powerful bullet points. So this particular student was president of a student organization while she was at GSU. But to put that into a more effective bullet point, we've changed that into instituted new procedures that streamline meetings, increased membership by 15%. So you want to see how you can look at your work experience and put those bullet points into accomplishments. For instance, we had a student who was an intern. And instead of just kind of listing the tasks, we had the intern bullet point read, analyze data for inclusion in a published research study. That bullet point is much more powerful than just coded data. Here are some sample effective bullet points, even for volunteer experience. If you don't have a lot of work experience, you can turn volunteer experience into accomplishments. All right. We talked a lot about what to include on your resume, but this slide represents the things that you should not include on your resume. You don't want to include a photo or any high school information on your resume. You also don't want to include any personal information. Make sure you steer away from personal information. And also, if you can, steer away from any information regarding your salary You certainly don't want to limit yourself if you're offered a job and enter into salary negotiations. Of course, you want to avoid any mistake on your resume. Your first impression is the only first impression that you get, so you want it to be great. So when it comes to a resume, before you start your job search, you want to make sure there are no spelling errors, poor grammar, and typos on your resume. You want to make sure you've included accomplishments wherever you can. You want to make sure all the dates of your degree and your past employment are accurate. And you want to make sure, most importantly, that your contact information is included and that it's correct. And also that, you will be checking that email address every day for communication from a potential employer. You also want to avoid putting any formatting such as boxes, templates, any kind of fancy fonts on your resume. You don't want your resume to get hung up in an applicant tracking system, and that poor formatting can certainly stop your resume from being viewed by a human resources professional. Before we leave the topic of resume and get into the job search a little bit more, I want to just touch on the cover letter. The cover letter is a document that's sent with your resume to give a more detailed view of who you are. You don't want to rewrite your resume here, and you don't want to, submit a personal biography by any means. The cover letter gives you an opportunity to connect your experience directly to the job and the employer. A cover letter is where you might want to mention how your work is aligned with the company's mission or some other connection that's relevant to the employer. You want to keep the cover letter brief, usually about 3 paragraphs, and make sure you address, the employer's needs and any transferable skills that you may bring. All right, so next is the job search. Where to begin? We're going to talk a little bit about job search and networking strategies. Okay, the first thing you want to do is manage your expectations. A typical job search can take around 3 to 6 months, especially if you're just starting out and maybe your first or second job. It does take time to get your materials together and begin networking. So just keep that in mind. One of the biggest tips I can offer you is to leverage your current relationships. You want to start your network where you are with those relationships that you already have. If you need contacts for jobs, you can participate in job fairs. There are job fairs all over Georgia. There are job fairs on our campus, which alums can also attend. You want to make sure that you maintain a strong digital presence. We're going to talk a little bit about that in terms of your job search. You want to network regularly, keep in contact, and we're going to go into that a little bit more today as well. Identify and research potential employers. Customize your resume and cover letter for each position. That's the material that we've just covered. And also, we have seen our graduates have luck with LinkedIn, Our Site Handshake, Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter, Indeed, one of the more premier websites. But we also encourage you to look at your professional organizations to learn more about potential employers and job openings as well. Okay, networking may be one of the most important tools to landing a job. According to recent studies, as many as 80% of jobs are gained through personal and professional connections. And we even hear from employers and the research that we do in our office that about 70% of jobs are not publicly listed. Instead, jobs are found through networking. These are opportunities gained through learning about ideal roles, and then creating the chance to apply and interview for them. In my work in career services, I am aware that some people resist networking for a number of key reasons, mainly because it feels somehow deeply challenging to network or even awkward. And some of my counseling clients who are introverts often perceive networking to be in contrast with their preferred communication style. But there are myriad ways to engage in networking without it feeling intimidating and difficult. It is a little forced, and it can start out as being a little bit awkward, but preparation is the key to overcoming this. It's important to understand that networking is essential if you want to build a truly rewarding career that will grow with you as you grow as a professional. There are multiple examples of networks that are already built into your life, but you must engage those in order for them to be effective. Some examples of networks that I put up here on the slide are, if while you were a student at GSU, if you were involved with student organizations, you could, reach back to those groups and network. Also, any other professional organizations that you're involved with. Any project teams that you were on, anyone that you kept in touch with while you were in school, or people that you've done projects with outside of your educational experience. Maybe you've done projects with people in your church or in your volunteer experience. Make sure you reach out to all of those folks. Let them know what types of jobs you're looking for. Have those resume materials ready to give out to them. Other networks that are pulled together for you are things like career fairs and job fairs. So get connected with that as well. And employer panels that might be available throughout your area. So you can network every day also with the people that you already know, maybe people that you've worked with in previous jobs. You can also ask for networking recommendations from friends, family, neighbors, mentors. And maybe you can seek information for networking from advisors that you've had in the past, employers that you've had, or other alumni. I know there are networking events that are planned through the Office of Alumni Relations that might be really useful for you as well. And just be open and receptive to meeting new contacts through colleagues at organizations, any kind of professional organizations on the job, or even online through sites and platforms like LinkedIn. You will need inspiring and influential people in your corner to help you land and access potential jobs and to continually evolve professionally throughout your career. To elevate our careers and our professional endeavors throughout the years, we do have to get in the right room with the right people and not focus only on connecting with people who are at our current level, but also think about reaching out to people who are in roles that you would actually like to obtain in the near future. So don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone a little bit while networking. If you're not sure where to begin your job search or networking, one thing you can do is research potential organizations that you might like to work for. You can make a list of them. Look at these potential organizations. What is their mission? What products and services do they produce? What's unique about them? And what kind of positions do they have available? So this is a good starting point if you're not quite sure where to begin. Also consider requesting informational interviews with someone at a company that you've researched who's doing the kind of work that you would like to be doing. It's a great way to learn, and it's a great way to network. So, when you do these types of informational interviews, you really are asking people, hey, can I, come by your office for a few minutes and talk to you about your work or about your company. You want to be mindful that people are very busy, so you don't want to ask them for an hour of their time. You probably just want to ask them for 15 or 20 minutes. You can always give them the option to meet with you virtually. But some of the benefits of doing that is that you get to understand how organizations work, get some insider information. You also learn how people got to where they are. What did it take for them to get into their positions? They may tell you, like, your resume is great, but you could really use an additional training or a certification. Here's one that I did. They can give you that extra information that you might not know about otherwise. And informational interviews are also another way to interview without the pressure of having to interview for a job. But then once you've met someone in these types of informational interviews, you have a contact now at that company, and you have someone who you can reach out to later should you want to apply somewhere at that company. And obviously you'll pass your resume along to this person and you'll have a connection there. Hopefully a connection that you can use throughout your career, one that you'll nurture along the way. If you're wondering what to ask in an informational interview or in other networking scenarios, here are a few questions to get the communication flowing. Simple question: can you tell me more about XYZ opportunities within your corporation? What type of projects are recently hired graduates working on? What advice do you have for me as I pursue my career? What can I share with you about myself or my experience? Ask them the questions that you want to know. Ask them, how long did it take you to work before you got into this leadership role? What is it like working with, say they're working with a big influencer, ask them what it's like to work with that person. Just kind of search yourself and see what are the questions that you want answered and that can help you in your career and in your job search, networking. Networking online is also important. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, now is the time to consider making one. LinkedIn is the premier online networking site with millions and millions of users worldwide. And I will say that employers expect that everyone that applies for their jobs will have a LinkedIn profile, and they will go to that LinkedIn profile. That is what employers across the board tell us at University Career Services. A couple of tips: choose a professional profile picture for LinkedIn. All employers expect to see a professional headshot. Make your headline on LinkedIn more than just a job title. Be more specific about whether you're on a mission to make access to clean water a reality, or whether you're specializing in disaster relief. Make your headline compelling. Turn your summary on LinkedIn into your story. Just be creative, decide what you want to share. Don't be afraid to let your personality shine through. LinkedIn is a professional site, but it is also a way for you to show a little bit of your personality. It's also a place where you showcase your experience. You can add multimedia onto LinkedIn if that's part of your work and your career portfolio. You can also grow your network with connections to companies by following key groups and thought leaders and organizations that reflect your interest. You can list your relevant skills on there, grow your endorsements, and make a list of the top people in your career who've been the most helpful up to this point. Reach out to them, make a connection, send them a message on LinkedIn. Share how they positively impacted you. Endorse other people, recommend them on LinkedIn, and then ask them to do the same for you. LinkedIn, again, is a really powerful way, especially if you're feeling a little uneasy about reaching out to people one-on-one, LinkedIn is a great way to do that, and it's a little less awkward for those of you who are more comfortable in the virtual space. Social media, again, LinkedIn is a form of social media, so it can, really help you in lots of ways, as I've just mentioned. But I put this slide on here to also say social media, in terms of your personal social media, can either help or hinder your job search. So you want to make sure you Google yourself before you initiate a job search and see what kind of information is out there and clean up your online footprint if it's not as professional as you want it to be. You might also want to consider making your personal social media accounts private. While you're job searching, employers will go and look and make sure that your personal social media is not in conflict with their mission, and sometimes that's hard to control. So just consider the impact of that, social media. And while you're doing all this networking, I would recommend keeping a record of who you've networked with and the jobs you've applied to, so you won't forget. You want to be able to remember who you've talked to and when, and be able to refer to the previous interactions that you've had with people in the past. So make sure you keep a record of it. Keep a record of who you talked to and what space you've spoken with them in. Okay, so in summary, in terms of networking, it's a key component to your job search to begin building your professional network. Networking really is the foundation for your job search. And as I said, it's the way that 80% of people that we survey are able to get jobs. It's a great starting point. It's an opportunity for you to learn and grow. Remember that networking is also a two-way interaction. If you're asking for something from a potential contact, you also want to remember to tell them what you can offer them. And keep in mind, while networking is intimidating, keep in mind that you have a degree from Georgia State University, so you have valuable skills and experience, and you have areas of knowledge to share. So make sure you engage that confidence and realize that networking is going to be the foundation of your job search, but it's also a lifelong skill. So it's a good time to go ahead and commit to networking at this point. Another key thing to note regarding networking and the job search is that professionals who are unhappy in their work often stay isolated for years, not building the very relationships that they need to get out of a current organization where they're unhappy. So just know, if you want to free yourself from an unsatisfying job situation, that being isolated is really not going to help you. And, if you want to land ideal roles that excite and stretch you, stretch your professional boundaries, you're going to have to move outside your comfort zone. You're going to have to know what you're great at, understand the great value that you bring, and why hiring managers should employ you over someone else that's applying. So really understand yourself, and networking will help tremendously with that. You simply cannot build an amazing, rewarding career without people in your corner who can help you, advise you, guide you, and put positions in front of you that you might be able to move into, regardless of whatever professional stage you're in. So these are some strategies for the job search. Thank you for logging in today and staying on until the end. I hope this information on the job search has been helpful today. I'm Shannon Shelton again. I'm at GSU's Career Services, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. Thank you.
Shannon, thank you again for a valuable presentation. Lots of good information. We did have a couple of questions that came in, and the first one is kind of general, but you finished your presentation really emphasizing networking. For someone that has a little bit of a hesitation issue walking into a room, per se, let's call it a networking event, any suggestions for someone who, again, is a little hesitant to put themselves out there amongst a room of people they don't know, or someone who's just getting started in the job search who hasn't really participated in a networking event like that?
Yes, no, it's a great question, and it's a question that many people have. I would say the best way to approach that kind of concern and that awkwardness of networking would be to start small. I would, if you have concern about walking into a room, I would start in the virtual space networking. Start with LinkedIn, those tips provided around LinkedIn. Really bolstering up your LinkedIn profile and start reaching out to companies and organizations, following them, interacting with their posts on LinkedIn. Start there. And then I would start small with networking one-on-one as opposed to in a large networking group. Once you get kind of comfortable networking in the virtual space, maybe move to, researching some organizations or maybe getting contacts from friends or family or someone you trust, a contact of someone who works at an organization that you admire, who's doing the kind of work that you want to do, and then maybe start with a small conversation. You could start that virtually if that would be more comfortable for you. Ask for a virtual informational interview, and then go from there.
A second question, and this kind of is a little bit of a follow-up to the networking question, but with regards to the proverbial elevator speech, is there things in particular, hypothetical, they say 30 to 60 seconds, particular things that someone wants to make sure that they get across in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And I'm really glad that you guys know what the elevator pitch is. That's awesome. I actually do a workshop on elevator pitch. Dave, maybe we'll do one of those at some point. Yeah, so the elevator pitch is, as you said, a 30 to 60 second sound bite of yourself. And it's really, really helpful when you start a job search to know what it is that you want to say. I always kind of start with a three-part formula. You want to introduce yourself, your name, your degree, your area of focus, and maybe where you are working at that particular point. So kind of like yourself in a nutshell. Then what you want to do, you want to know your audience, right? So depending on who you're speaking with, if you're talking to someone who has a position that you would like, you would then say, I've done some work at this company or at that company doing very similar things. Say it's a publishing company, as an editorial assistant, I've worked at this company and that company. And then kind of the third thing you want to do is bring it back around to the person that you're talking to and say, I'm so glad that I saw you at this event today. I really admire the company that you work for, and I've always wanted to, work there and meet someone from this company. And you kind of just want to land it back onto them so that you leave it open for them to then respond to you. But you've given your pitch for yourself. You've introduced yourself. You've said a little bit about your experience and your goals, and then you've tied it together to make a connection with the person that you're talking to. So that's kind of a quick three-part 1, 2, 3 way to just compose that. I recommend that everybody really compose one of those for themselves, with some variables in there that you can change out pretty quickly in your brain, depending on who you're talking to. It can be really helpful to write that elevator pitch down and then practice it, aloud in front of a mirror. And know that you won't get it perfect every time, but no one knows what you've written down and what you've left out. So if you can at least articulate things about yourself in a coherent way. It'll kind of also take the anxiety of talking to people you don't know very well, takes that anxiety way down. So highly recommend doing some work on the elevator pitch.
And you're right. If you present that, that might be a great topic for an upcoming webinar.
Yeah.
The last question, and you definitely touched on resumes, and the alumni office here at Georgia State, as well as University Career Services, if you're a student at Georgia State, does offer resume review services. If you're interested from an alumni standpoint, reach out to me here at the Alumni Center, and we can get you scheduled with one of our HR professionals. But the question is, and we see this, you see resumes that come in at 1 page. You see some resumes, depending upon what field a person is, could come in at 4 pages or sometimes 5 pages. Is 2 pages the norm? Is there a too much or a too little point with regards to the number of pages your resume should be?
Again, it's a great question. Here's the reality. Employers tell us they spend about 25 seconds looking at a resume. So, what you want to do is realize that you want to put the most impactful information in the most concise way, right? I usually tell students, if you have, or students or clients, if you have less than 10 years experience in your field, try to keep it to 1 page. Try to make the most of that 1 page real estate. And don't do that by making the margins really tiny and making the print really small, but just really think about who you're writing that resume to. You don't want to put a lot of information on the resume that's not relevant to your audience, right? If you, I'll just keep the publishing editing analogy going. If you're a journalism graduate and you want to work in publishing, and you've had a job as an editorial assistant, and you put that job first and just put a couple of bullet points and then put all of these other irrelevant jobs underneath it, then you haven't really utilized the real estate on your resume very well. What you want to do is make that job that's most relevant to the job you're applying for, have more bullet points, and then really shrink down those other jobs, or maybe leave some of them off if they were really short jobs and they're not really relevant in taking you sort of to the next level of your career. Resumes are so personal. I know they seem impersonal, but it's really hard to answer that question, a one size fits all. But what I would say is just really think about your reader and think about, if you got a stack of 100 resumes, how are you going to approach that? Think about your reader and think about what you want when their eyes fall on the page. What is it that you want them to see? So obviously, if you've been in your career for 20 years, your resume is going to be two plus pages. Or if you're going into a field like academia, then you're probably going to have something much longer like a CV. But if you're fresh out of school, just a few years, 1 page.
All right, well, that's all for our questions. Shannon, another fantastic presentation, a lot of great, valuable information, and we'll look forward to having you back again to present at an upcoming webinar.
That sounds great. Thanks to everybody for logging on today.
All right, again, we'd like to thank our viewers today on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and on our StreamYard platform. Please visit the Alumni Association online at alumni.gsu.edu for more upcoming alumni programs available to our alumni community. So for Shannon Shelton, Dave Cohen saying good afternoon from the Alumni Center in Atlanta. We'll be back again soon with another webinar in our series, and thank you for watching.